Hi guys. So this is going to be an overview of how to do page 3 of the lab activity B, mass, angle, and gravity for the Pendulum Clock Lab. To start us off, we're asked to observe. It says experiment with the different variables available in Gizmo, dragging new bob to the pendulum to change the mass, drag the rod of the pendulum left or right to change the starting angle, and change the location to Jupiter to increase gravity or force on the pendulum. Form hypotheses. How will each factor affect the period of the pendulum? So I've created just a sample here of basically sentence starters for that portion. I'm going to copy it over to show you. Okay, so for mass, if the mass is increased, then the period will increase or decrease. Make your prediction. If the starting angle is increased, then the period will increase or decrease. Make your prediction. If the gravity is increased, then the period will increase or decrease. So I'm suggesting that you leave these all as increased just to make it consistent and then determine whether you think the period will increase or decrease as a result. Experiment. Use the gizmo to find the effect of each variable on the pendulum. Make sure that each experiment is controlled. Only the variable you're testing should be changed. So in other words, if you want to know the effect of mass, do multiple experiments with different masses, but that should be the only thing different. So it says record all results below, but it doesn't give a table. So I've done tables for you that I'm going to show. Just give me 1 second to switch these over. So to start with, I made the first table for mass, and let's see. Okay, so all I did actually was take the table from up here and just copied it and pasted it down. So that's what you can do too. I chose to change it to only 3 trials, not 5. And then I've also changed the color. So blue is going to be the dependent variable. That's the variable you're trying to find. Then red is the variable that you're testing for, because there wasn't really like a title to the table. So to me, that made the most sense. So then I'm going to go ahead and paste, I'm going to go ahead and copy this table and then paste it twice for the other 2. Okay. And then I'm going to adjust the colors. So the first one was mass. So that's the first table here. Then starting angle. So I'm going to change mass to black font and change starting angle to red font to indicate that in this table, I'm testing the starting angle. And then for the last table is actually for gravity, and that's not a column. So to add that, you click on the end column, and if you have a mouse, right click, or you can go to Format, Table, Insert Column to the right, and it gives you an extra column. And I'm going to make that red, and this is just going to be gravity. Now, in the simulation, I checked, there's only 2 different gravities. So you have Earth or Jupiter, and that's it. So you don't actually need 3 rows, you need 2. So I'm going to click on this last row. You can either right click with your mouse and do delete row, or you can go up here to Format, Table, Delete Row. All right, so this first one is going to be Earth. Earth, which has a gravity of 10 meters per second squared, and Jupiter, which has a gravity of 25 meters per second squared. Okay. Now to collect the data. So for this first table, we're changing just the mass, and that's it. So I'm going to use the default settings of the simulation. So what it's set at when you first open it, and that includes the mass. So not the mass. The starting angle is 25 degrees for the default setting. So that's what I'm going to leave it at. for each of these trials. And the default length is 200, which I'm also going to leave it at. Because remember, when I'm doing an experiment, I can only change one thing to be able to actually compare it. So for the mass, I have a choice of 1, 2, 3, or 4. Pick whichever 3 you want to do. I'm going to do 1, 2, and 3. So 1, 2, and 3 kilograms. And then I'm going to find the period in seconds. Now, this setting right here, number 2, where it's 200 length, 25 degrees, and 2 kilograms, was the one we did at the very beginning. And we already determined that one was 2.8. So it's a little bit, use that one. Why not? Why do it again? And so you're going to test the experiment using the 3 different masses. So to switch the masses, I'm just going to show you that part. So if I want to measure 2 kilograms, I hit play. I mark time as it clicks over, which I need to start over. Okay, so every time it swings left, hit the click, and it'll start measuring. Okay, and if I do this long enough, I should get about 2.8 every time. But I'm going to go ahead and stop it. All right, so to change the mass of the bob, I click up here, drag it, and it'll switch it. Okay, so now I have 1. So then you're going to repeat, find the average time, and put that into your table here. Okay, and then repeat for 3 kilograms, find that average time, and put that in as well. For the next part, we're changing the angle. So I'm going to go ahead and once again keep the length the same as the default setting. Okay, and I'm going to use the mass in the default setting, which was 2. And for starting angle, it's 25 is default. So you can do 25, 30, 40, 35. You can do 25, 35, 45, whatever you want to do. I'm going to do on here for just this example, 25, 35, actually 30 and 35. Okay. And then do this. All right, so default setting, I need to switch this back out for the 2 kilograms. I did not change the length. It's still 200. And I did not change the angle yet. So it's at 25 and then we're still on Earth. So to change the angle, make sure you click high enough up on this bar. If you click too far down, it'll change the length of it versus the angle. So we're starting at 25 and I want to measure at 30. So I drag it by clicking and pulling it up. Now it's at 30. And then again, you're going to record the average. Oops, I could tell that was slow. And you can hear it when you kind of miss the moment and the numbers are getting all wonky. I'm kind of getting tired, I think, here. But do this until it's consistent, or do a lot of do all both rows of numbers and then find the average to get a more consistent number. I would recommend that because it's almost a little bit faster to do that than it is to try to estimate it. So going back to here, this one, again, remember 200 centimeter length, 25 angle, and 2 mass was our default setting. So we already know that one's 2.8. And then you do the one for 30 and 35 and find those 2 as well. Now, of course, you don't have to use these angles. These are just the ones that I'm using as an example. Feel free to use the same ones or pick different ones. The last test is comparing gravity. So we want our length to be our default again. We want our angle to be the same. And we want our mass to be the same. Okay. And then gravity. So the one once again, our default again is that 2.8 because we did all of our experiments the first time on Earth. All right, so then all we have to do now is just switch this over to back to the correct setting. So here's 30. We have to switch this back to 25. Reset. 25. Length is good. Correct mass. And now we're just going to change to Jupiter. I love how it does a different background. Okay, play. Okay. Do about 10 trials and then come up with the average, put that here. Then you're going to describe your results. How does each variable affect the period? If there was no effect, so let's say that for starting angle, you get almost the same answer for all three, then you're going to go with no effect. There's no effect if it's the same. If the period changes visibly with a pattern, so let's say as the angle increases, the period decreases, let's say, and it's substantial enough to where it's obvious. If you're not sure, like it's too close, do another angle that's a little bit further down and see if you do see a difference. But if it's really close, then you would go with no effect. But if it's consistently getting smaller or bigger, then I would do a few more trials to kind of confirm that. But that's all you're reporting here, is that is there an effect or what is that effect? So for example, if one of these did have an effect, you would put if the mass is increased. Remember up here, we started off with a few statements, right? If the mass is increased, and you can even just copy paste this down. Okay. So what did you find in your experiment? When the mass is increased, then the period will increase or decrease. And your new option is no change, or will not change, I guess would make more sense. Not change. And then the period will not change, not change, not change. Okay, so if one, two, or three of these did not change the period, then you would say if the mass is increased, the period will not change. Or you can just say no change for the ones that do not have an effect. For the one or ones that do have an effect, you would state it as if the starting angle is increased, then the period will, and then what did you find? Did it increase or decrease based on your data? Draw conclusions. Which factor had the biggest effect on the pendulum period? Explain. So did one of them have a greater effect? Did one of them have an effect and others didn't? Or how did that work out? Explain here in a few sentences. And then that's the end for the day. The last page will be extra credit. So I'm not going to go over that one. That's going to be on your time to figure to do that one if you want to do it. But otherwise, that's what's to be done for Thursday is this particular experiment here, activity B.